Excellent, excellent. Welcome, everybody. Ready to roll here on the Digital Roundtable. The crew is here again with you to have a great talk. We have a special guest, Alper Uzmezler, the founder of Anka Labs, who is a smart building software company that is going to tell us all kinds of cool things that he's working on and how the future is happening sooner than we think. So we got our own King, Llewelyn King. How are you, Llewelyn?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. And we got Dr. John Butler. John, how are you?
I am just fine in this pandemic.
Excellent. Alper, how are you doing today?
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. So let me round up real quick where things are. You know, some people say that wheels are coming off the cart, or the train is being derailed, or the end is near. It's interesting what's going on. So COVID seems to be inching up. It's kind of trending either a little up or steady. The death toll is trending up. The cases are flattening, so it's, you know, it's a mixed bag. We clearly got to do better, and there's all kinds of issues going on in terms of how much more should be done and can be done. Back to school seems to be the hottest topic of nationwide right now, how that's going to unfold. So stay tuned for our quick commentary on that. On the stock market continues to creep up. The Dow is at 27,000, up 670 points from last week. New York Stock Exchange Index is 129 points up, and NASDAQ just reached again another peak, 450 points up. And there's all kinds of reasons why this is happening. There's you know, some great companies. For example, there's a new Austin company called BigCommerce, who had an IPO yesterday, and their results in terms of success for business was that their business is growing at 22% month over month. They compete with Shopify, which competes with Amazon. So BigCommerce, another Austin startup, the kind of companies that John likes, it's tearing it up. Crude oil pricing, it's down $1.15, hovering in the 40s. And the gallon of gasoline is down 10 cents in Austin. Again, I keep thinking that the gallon of gas should be super high because nobody's flying, but it's kind of hovering in between the 140 and the 180, up and down. It's kind of interesting to see what's going on there in terms of how much people are driving and what's happening with transportation in general. So John, give us some insights into what you think is happening this week.
Well, I think what's happening now, I think we're at a surprise sector in our thinking about the virus. You know, if you look at it in terms of, let's forget about the numbers on the chart itself. Let's look at how people think about it. Mm-hmm. There is an up and down curve on the mental aspirations or the mental curves of America. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it started out as saying, well, you know, perhaps this thing isn't bad. And then it said, well, I think it's pretty bad. And then it's bad, let's stay in. And then mentally, we said, well, you know, it's bad, but we have to go through this stuff, right? And then we got to the point where it's very interesting, like the seatbelts. People were saying, well, you know, I don't know if I really want to wear a face mask. So it's interesting to watch all of the turbulence around face masks, whether it's on an airplane, whether it's in a place of commerce. So you can see, I call it the mental barometer of Americans, if you will. It's up and down. It's quite like the stock market. And I think we're to the point now that we really don't know where we are. I wouldn't say who to trust, because I think we should look at the science. So in a real sense, the virus is constant. It's almost a constant now. And the question is, do we go by the rules to really try and get rid of it? On the stock market, we would expect the stock market to continue to inch upward because it has little to do with the gig economy It is a place where wealth is created and people are looking at the future. So if you look at the futures where people invest, I think that's the indication of really what's kind of going on there. Heads off to big commerce, following the great tradition of Jim Tressard and National Instruments in Austin, Michael Dell in Austin, Whole Foods in Austin, Alan Blake and Glowfish in Austin. So we take our heads off to that. Overall, I think we have to now look at, we talked about the virus being a global thing, but it's really getting global now. If you look at what's happening in Vietnam, we like to say that we can have a model of what happened to the virus in a different country, but now it looks like it's everywhere. Mm. And of course, from a personal point of view, I'm still doing my social physics and smart cities and smart business and writing equations about the future. That's kind of where we are now. We are.
All right, Llewelyn.
Well, I think we're in a precarious position. The virus is rising. The largest group of employment in this country is restaurants, and they are failing at an incredible rate. That's throwing a lot of semi-skilled people in the millions on the streets with nothing for them to do, even when the virus is vanquished. What we need now is to begin a plan of reconstruction for after this thing, when we have defeated it scientifically, which we will do either by finding ways of living with it and scientifically, like air in schools and restaurants and public places in general. But we need a reconstruction plan that we know where we're going to go. They're talking about giving more money to restaurants. It may not be the answer. We need to think it out and have a plan. No war is fought, and this is a war. Victory is in sight without a plan for what happens after the victory. We've seen that with Reconstruction after the Civil War, with the Marshall Plan after the Second World War. You need a plan. You need to know what is going to happen. And it is not going to be the way it was before the war. The status quo ante is not coming back. We have to find employment for those people who have, maybe for a decade, maybe for 10, 12 years, lost their jobs and they're not coming back quickly. Restaurants will come back, but they won't come back by fiat at the White House. They won't come back because we want them back. They'll come back when the finances are put together, when the safety is assured, when the culture has demanded them. But in the interim, they are the canary in the coal mine, the restaurants and their employees. The stock market is doing a high wire act all by itself, but the lions are loose in the stadium. Don't worry about the stock market and the guy up on it. Look at what is happening in Main Street, where people work or don't work. We cannot forever give them money. We have to find how to get them back to work, constructive, worthwhile, dignified work, until the economy repairs itself, until the whole hospitality trade is put back together, repaired and consolidated in ways we cannot imagine. We also have to liberate all the technology that can help us in this battle. I have been talking to medical researchers about off-label uses of known drugs. It's very exciting, but we have no czar, nobody's running this. It is almost as though there's a vacancy at the top in this country, and we need somebody to be in charge to start leading us towards what Winston Churchill called the sunlit uplands. We'll get there, but my goodness, right at the moment, it looks as though it'll be a rough road and we'll lose a lot of people along it.
Yeah. Okay, Alper, give us your sense. What's happening? How do you feel about it? What's happening in the industry of smart buildings? What's going on? What's COVID doing to it? What's happening with the economy? Give us your sense.
It doesn't look bright. It's a grim outlook for sure for the commerce and the building side. It is. They don't know. There's no solution yet because because there's no solution. They don't know what to invest into and what to do. So there are some pilots going on about remedying the effects of the virus, but because there's no direct answer to the solution, we are in an influx right now. They're not doing until this thing is resolved scientifically and there's a valid, solid answer. I think we will just do pilots until the point we get there.
So gentlemen, I'm really shocked that the United States of America, almighty land of the free, and never lost a significant major war. You know, I mean, innovation, put the men in the moon. We're gonna put the men in Mars. Brightest mind in the planet. How can there be a lack of planning, think tank coming together? I mean, we're waiting for Jesus to show up. I mean, what happened? What happened to the grit of America? What's going on? Why aren't all these infamous think tanks across the United States already come up with a 10-point plan? Where are all the geniuses? What's going on?
Andre, you hit it. Let's do some interesting parallels here. What interesting thing about America is that it was isolated geographically. Okay, so therefore what that meant was that, you know, the wars, we've really never been invaded except maybe the Civil War and 9/11 for the most part. But this thing, of course, knows no borders. So so the isolation, the geographic isolation, gives way to the flow of currents and the movement of people and the world economy, airplanes flying and people getting off of airplanes themselves. So I think it is a different kind of war, if you will, that really deletes the importance of geography. The other thing about the planning is this, I can say this, that President Bush had talked about it while he was in office. He said, my gosh, this thing comes every 100 years and perhaps we should start to do about it. But obviously, it wasn't so much that we were taken by surprise, we were taken by the surprise of unpreparedness. And what do? I mean, how can you be prepared? What do you do to be prepared? Well, you would have to have things in place where if you have a breakout in California, then you've got to have the national, and of course, and the international resolve, if you will, to have all the tracking in place. And you are right, with all of the technology that we have, and let me just talk about smart cities and smart buildings. We need to build that into the technologies. We need to be able to know and understand what people are doing when they get sick, and et cetera. So I think it was a lack of planning, of what Llewelyn would call somebody at the top saying that when you walk onto the airplane, who is flying the airplane. So we don't get good grades for planning. We get better grades for trying to react to.
But John, aren't the experts at the CDC, the geniuses at the CDC, isn't this what they should be dreaming about all day long? Don't they have a plan? Don't they get a cushy paycheck every month? I mean, what's happening?
Well, I think if you look with the CDC, and let me say that my sister worked there, over the last 3 years, a lot of their tools were taken away from them, and they did not have the tools to do X, Y, and Z. And I think there was a lot of disruption at the top. But I also think that this might be a different kind of virus, but I think it's, no matter the planning, I think the most important thing is the isolation didn't take place. And as Llewelyn would say, we had nobody guiding the isolation. And the question is, what was the knowledge base that we had about viruses and this virus? And of course, there's a lot of blame going on from the CDC to China. Did it come from an animal? Is it man-made? All those things.
Let me give you another angle, and John, and feel free, Llewelyn and Alper, to chime in. But here's another angle in terms of, again, why are we not reacting to this, right? I mean, Johns Hopkins University, which is the place where everybody now goes to get the data on COVID, right? I mean, Johns Hopkins University is the almighty crown worldwide champion of research and medical anything. $2.5 billion. They have more PhDs than any other company, any other university. I mean, they are a league of their own. Where is the plan from Johns Hopkins to beat this?
Well, I don't think it's there. I think if you look at it, if you look at what's happening in America at the very, very top, and this is what I think personally happened in America. I think the first thing they were concerned about was the military, make sure that there was no virus in the military. And then I think the second thing had to do with the states. And given how we think about America with Johns Hopkins and states and governors, again, as Llewelyn would say, there was nobody to coordinate the states with the federal government and with the science. Now, another important thing that's happening, I think, is we're thrown back to this idea about the importance of science. And what I'm getting out of this is, to what extent, or what percentage of Americans really believe in science? Are we back to the 1700s when the founders of America said perhaps we should keep religious ideas out of the country and make it a scientific country, only relate to things that are scientific? So I think it's very interesting to look at and think about those things. But I go back to the whole idea. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and as Llewelyn said, you got to have somebody at the top that's planning and doing things to carry it out. And then you say, where are we as we assess? Right now, it looks like it's the wild, wild west of science. Not only is the real science there, but also the voodoo science and the tradition is there also.
So Llewelyn, set aside for a moment that the Messiah is not coming, that we don't need some single guy that knows everything. We have plenty of brilliant minds in this country. Where are they? What's going on?
We do need some leadership. We need some single person to gather together all the resources of the government. And
why?
Because we've got a crisis. Would you go into a war without any generals? I mean, that is such a self-answering question.
We have too many generals.
We don't have any generals, and we don't have any battle plan. We have a total political failure, the largest political failure.
I think that pinning this on the political escape is pointless. The politicians don't have any IQ. They're not very smart people. Where are the brilliant minds of this country? Alper, where are the brilliant minds? What's happening?
I think the science is so much politicized right now. It is becoming polarized. And
but why don't we have
right
a plan?
minds are...
Forget that. Forget all that. Where is the plan? Where is the Bill Gates giving us a plan? Where is Johns Hopkins giving us a plan? Where is the whatever foundation, the Aspen Institute? Where are the geniuses of this country?
But I think there are plans everywhere, as Alper was about to say. And the question is, as Llewelyn would say, how do we get all the plans together and say, we are going to do X, Y, and Z? By the way, some people have a plan for voodoo medicine. Some people have a plan for other kind of medicine. Some people have a plan for other kind of medicine. And the question is, and remember, what we like to do is wait on the science. I want to see if it works. I want to see, where's the laboratory to see if it works. So to me, a plan is, you create a vaccine and you see if it works at Johns Hopkins, and that might be going on now.
Yeah, you can get a sense of my frustration, right? So.
This is more of a problem than you think. When we get a vaccine, we do not have a mechanism for delivering it, and we do not have a mechanism for assessing when maybe 100 vaccines will be available within the same few months, which one should be exploited, which one should be gotten to the public. We do not want to have some people getting a vaccine that's 30% effective, some people getting one that's 90% effective. We need coherence, and we have no coherence. We have genius and nobody marshalling it to a common national purpose, which is to defeat this contagion.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on this topic because it really is burning me. Maybe I have to become Tony Stark and start reading medicine, and I'll come up with a plan, because I don't know anything about healthcare, but it's mind-boggling to me. So let's switch to telecom and technology and things that I know about. So So regardless of what's happening, though, we have agreed multiple times that COVID is accelerating digitalization, and the digital economy is coming at us at 1 billion miles an hour. So just some highlights, right? I mean, the 5G, which is going to be the single most significant innovation in our lifetime, is coming at us at a great pace. T-Mobile announced yesterday that they have unveiled their nationwide coverage of 5G. And they did the announcement in a place called Lisbon, North Dakota, of all places. 2,000 people live in Lisbon, North Dakota. They have 5G offering in Lisbon, North Dakota, okay? So T-Mobile is basically telling everybody, look, we're ready. Bring it on, bring the phones. We're ready to roll. 5G is happening, okay? On a similar note, the CBRS licensing from the FCC, which is this 3.6 gigahertz frequency, has gone beyond expectation. They raised over $1 billion, and there's more to come. Another tidbit, very interesting. A little company called Amazon just got approval from the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, to invest $10 billion on what they call Project Coupier to build a low orbit satellite broadband network on the 12 gigahertz frequency. Did you guys hear what I just said?
Yes, it is.
Amazon is going to be your broadband provider in 2 years.
And they might be providing electricity in 6 years.
You're right about that.
Well, let's comment. Let me just comment very briefly on where it is. The fact that it's in Luckenbach, Texas, that means it doesn't matter where you are these days.
That's right.
What it means is that our technology has evolved to the point where it is a great book. What does place mean anymore? And so as place will never disappear because we're humans and we like to interact with people. But the fact that it's in Luckenbach is pretty wild. But you know, there's probably less things to do in Luckenbach and less things to have to go through, right? The second thing with the Amazon, the technology is meaning that different business models will emerge. It means, for example, that for those companies, and this is right out of the great Schumpeter. Schumpeter said that when companies have a lot of cash, wealth is not, it's for investment in the future. It is not the wealth that a typical calculator would see, but profit is not profit in the sense that we think about profit. Profit is the ability to switch business models. Okay? So with a company like Amazon, they can be whatever they want to be. They could be a bank. They could be a car dealership. They could build smart houses. So it doesn't surprise me then that they're using their profit to redefine their business model. So they have gone from a let's buy Amazon to, hey, not only am I going to be a provider, but you can look at the 5G stuff, but they have also had the best person in the world for the grid. Right. So has Google. So you see these business models coming. So it is not surprising that the companies with the most wealth would be able to go out and create new business models.
Yeah. Llewelyn, what do you think? Amazon being your broadband provider in 2 years?
Well, I think that there is a public feeling, and certainly there's a feeling in the US Congress, that big tech has gotten too big for its reaches. This is a feeling, this is a sense. You saw it in the hearings. No longer are people happy with the size of big tech. They're beginning to wonder what are the downsides of it. Amazon has been amazing, but it also has violated something that we've seen elsewhere, and that is it has not been constrained by success. What do I mean constrained by success? Big companies tend to get big and hit a plateau and get more interested in maintaining their position on the plateau than innovating. Amazon has innovated, but it has only innovated by taking over other people's franchise territory. It has not, beyond its initial, invented anything outside of its initial business plan.
I disagree.
I disagree with that.
We're going to see some limits put on big companies, and some will limit themselves. There's the very interesting work that Peter Drucker did on General Motors. He thought it was a pity when General Motors limited itself to 50% of market share, but it was also clearly something that would save General Motors from the hammer of antitrust. And the big tech companies are looking at antitrust because the politicians are looking at it.
Yeah.
We are a society governed by politicians, even though we may not respect them.
So Alper, you seem to be with me that you don't agree. So tell us why you don't agree. Is Amazon an innovator, the best innovator? What do you think of Amazon being your broadband company?
Well, Amazon is definitely an innovator company. They've been innovating the cloud space, and they're number one. I mean, Google is trying to catch up with their technology that is on the cloud, having hard time. The topic of creating internet is they're actually trying to eliminate a roadblock for their businesses, and that is having internet. And this has nothing to do with the United States. This has more to do with the continent of Africa. So these large companies are creating these. I mean, Facebook is also coming up with kites, like flying objects to give broadband to people. And this is all about the global economy expansion. And I don't think it has anything to do with the United States. They want to innovate this realm for other areas where there's no internet currently.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's been going on. And I also think when Llewelyn said it's not an innovative company, that is, they don't have scientists themselves that's doing the research in-house. They tend to purchase their companies as they move along. So if you look at Dell, that went from a supplier company to a company where he actually did research inside. So I'll give Llewelyn a little hit there in terms of a company's innovative when they have their own scientists doing the research themselves, like an Apple, rather than purchasing sciences. But let me just say this, Albert, also, I think that I can remember that if you look at the continent of Africa, there were people who were bringing ships up to certain places once a month so people could have the broadband. But you have to also say that this would be an experiment for Amazon as they provide broadband, but you just can't look at it from an African point of view or developing country point of view. You got to look at it as they are cutting their teeth in broadband.
That's very important. Africa certainly needs broadband as it needs three-phase electricity. I've seen instances that were single-phase, which are really useless because you can't run a factory, you can't run anything bigger than.
Yeah, there are things being done on that too. Yeah.
Sorry, sir.
There are things being done on that front as well. There are ships. There's actually a company in Turkey builds big vessels that converts LNG to electricity, and they dock on ports in Africa. There are things being done to bring electricity to the continent as well. But yeah, we're getting out of topic.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting though, but it's only bringing it to the coasts of Africa as a deep. I think one of the things that's worth looking at in Africa is the way that cell phones have totally been leapfrog technology in Africa in a way that it's not been anywhere else. Copper wire phones really could not handle the distances, but cell phones have managed to become ubiquitous in much of Africa, and that's very impressive, and I think it's a guide to the future. If you don't have infrastructure, you don't have the legacy that goes with it, and sometimes, therefore, you can be on the cutting edge because there is nothing holding you back or dragging you down.
So hence why 5G will change the whole thing, right? Because it's a gigabit wireless. So let me take a pause here real quick and talk about our Digital 360 Summit is coming up. It's August 18th, 19th, 20th, 25th, 26th, 27th. And the three of you are going to be participating in different panels. So thank you in advance for being involved in the Digital 360 Summit. We have our registration is breaking our expectations. So it's looking really good. The promotion is happening aggressively, and we have a significant number of companies involved. And I want to thank Texas State University for being a sponsor of the Digital-Roundtable. And let me go back to our conversation, and let's switch to buildings. So Alper, being the building guru every day, there's a lot of stuff going on in buildings. So 5G is being focused for in-building technology innovation, probably competing with Wi-Fi 6. And everybody's trying to figure out how 5G perhaps becomes the biggest play inside buildings. So looking forward to get your feedback on that. The other thing that is interesting is GE Current, a company that you know, and a company called Pointer have partnered to enable location-based services in buildings. So you know how it's probably easy with the wireless technology, the carriers' wireless area networks, with your GPS and your cell phone to kind of find out where you are for the Uber car and all that. But it's really not 100% accurate, right? And inside a building, if I'm on one corner of a building and you're on another corner of a building, and I'm trying to look for you, if there was a map of sorts, it would be great to see exactly in what corner you're at, next to exactly what water cooler or what stairway, right? And so that means that the triangulation of that location needs to go from feet to inches, right? And so GE Current and Pointer have agreed to build that technology. And then the last partnership that got announced last week was Microsoft and Samsung have agreed to leverage the Microsoft technology in the office with Azure and machine learning and AI, and the Samsung infrastructure that goes into buildings as they compete now with Siemens and Honeywell and the others with their smart things. It all focus on commercial and industrial. Another player to maybe either partner with or compete against. Alper, what do you think of those three news?
I do see a fragmentation of cloud services. Everyone is building their own silo and their own partners. This has been happening for the last couple of years. The technologies that they're building for sure is related to COVID, distancing, social distancing, and all that. There are other solutions, but I do see each large company trying to build their own siloed cloud. That's I'm happy that there's investment into smart building space, but also I'm afraid that it's going to create siloed smart services where at the end the utilizers are not going to benefit out much.
So tell us real quick for John and Llewelyn to come back at you with some questions. Tell us in 30 seconds or less, what is it that you're selling today? What is the breakthrough technology that you're proposing? Tell us what's happening in your world.
I'm in the smart buildings industry. I've been in it for 20 years. And for the last 4 years, I've been working on a technology, Sleepless. I'm creating a technology, hardware agnostic controls. So the technology as an electronics board is tied to the software, and that's how it's sold to the industry. And we have written a semantic data modeled open source controls logic. And that way you can, the code would be portable between devices. The analogy would be is that you open up Word on Apple and you write your Word document, but you cannot open it in Microsoft Word in Windows. This is the state the industry is in, and we are trying to break that. Also, we have analytics at the edge of the devices. So edge analytics is another topic that we are focusing on.
So in other words, if I am AT&T and I have 60,000 buildings in the United States and I have 100 building management systems from 100 different companies, I could buy your software and now I can see and manage the whole thing.
Not only that, so AT&T is probably utilizing 100 different, let's say 20 different companies, and the value where the controls logic is built in these buildings, they are different. So they are locked into those vendors to get service from them. What we are doing is we're pretty much like what PCs have done with IBM. When IBM open sourced the hardware stack, now you can buy personal computers from multiple manufacturers. The open source stack that we created is pretty much doing that, commoditizing the hardware for smart building space.
It seems like to me we're going back to the old dumb computer and the mainframe. You're not old enough to remember when everything was done by the dumb computer because there was no software internal to the dumb computer. So I would log on to the mainframe, it's called the cloud now, at the University of Texas. I would run my analysis and then I would walk over to the building and pick it up. So this is what I'm hearing you saying. There's so much happening now in the cloud, if you will, of the smart cities. We're kind of going back to where we were with computers. There was so much going on 60 years ago. So I was working on Lotus 1, 2, 3. Andreas was working on Butler 685. King was working on Jaja Vu 934. And there was so much going on. There was so much variability, nobody could communicate with each other. So what I hear you saying is that what you want to do is you want open innovation, you want open stacks, so that people can not only communicate with each other, but create new business models around those open stacks. Is that right?
That is correct. And I'm not I don't, we also use commercial software as well. Okay. And at the edge, but open places where it needs to be open, and closed software to innovate faster or get it to market faster, we use commercial software. So it's a partnership of both.
Well, let's create a business right here, and I want 10%, and Andre can have 2%, and we'll give Llewelyn 1%. One of my big frustrations is that when I'm in a stadium, and I hope to be there maybe sometime in the future, and I go to pick up a hot dog, and the lines are just long. I don't know why somewhere in that stadium, if it was smart, it could tell me where to go when the lines are short. It can tell me the products that they have in that concession.
Yeah.
It would be saving time. And I'm not interested in finding Andre in a building. I'm interested in getting a hot dog at a Longhorn football game where I don't have to stand in a line for 20 minutes and miss the game. So it seemed to me if we could build a smart stadium, which would direct people to everything they need, especially food
I'll take the drone delivery to my seat.
and the drone delivery to the seat. Have you thought about something practical like that for stadiums?
That's yeah. Go ahead, Mr.
Go ahead, Llewelyn.
Albert, I'm very interested in your smart building, but I wonder how complete it will be. Will your electronic procedure of the brains of the building extend to the operation of the building? Will you start, as part of your package, will you control functions in the building? Because we may have to control functions in the building for sanitation, primarily to fight the virus. I've been very interested in how we can clean the air in buildings. There are technologies, there are different approaches, but it would require the management of that by computers, and they would have to be fairly smart, fairly sophisticated. They would have to have sensors to measure the amount of cleaning taking place. Is it 80%, 93%, whatever? Mm-hmm. The other thing is we see across the country a danger with people who have malware attacking industrial controllers, chemical controllers, bypassing the normal IT and going directly to the controller. would the controllers that run buildings, run the dampers in them, run the elevators, all of these, would they be safe from cyber attack once they signed on to the new homogeneous management computer-wise?
Great questions. Let's talk about the cybersecurity part of it. I will try. That is always going to be. It's almost building up your defenses for your country. You need to look at air, land, and the ground forces, and it's basically the smart buildings technology. You need to look at how you're securing your hardware. This includes all the parts that you source, where you put it together, what software you put in it. That's number one area of your security. Number two is going to be the operating system. You need to secure your operating system and the software that is inside it. Do you have firewalls built into it? And also, once you install it, how do you rectify and find issues? So this goes into the questioning of provisioning and constant monitoring of security holes. And then what is your model of patching it? And today, if you look at your smartphones, when there's a security hole, the company sends you an update, and then you click a button and it updates it. So it will be, and the last part is that, are you segregating the network, IT to OT? There should be no devices on the network where the operation technology is installed. This doesn't mean that it has to be physical. It can be a physical segregation with Ethernet ports and switches, or it can be virtual LANs that is created on the same switch. It is a problem that we will have to create technologies and tooling around, and it will be a constant battle to keep it secure. That is my answer.
So I appreciate that insight, and we wish you super success on the journey here of what I think it's an open source controlled software platform that it's in the early days, and hopefully it will be successful, and perhaps you will be another software company in Austin that gets acquired by a big one. So Llewelyn, you had another follow-up question, or am I going to switch? I'm going to switch topics.
Well, if you're switching, I thought that was very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Interested in the future.
Yeah, I know that buildings are part of smart cities, so I'm switching to smart cities real quick. So we have talked about quite a bit about the fact that electrification of transportation is coming in a big way, all the things that Uber has been working on, and so on and so on. So General Motors this week announced a partnership with a company called EVgo, which is the largest privately owned EV charging infrastructure player in the United States. And they just partnered up, and GM is making now batteries for electric vehicle charging stations. So this is a new business for General Motors. And they signed a contract where EVgo is going to buy GM batteries, General Motor batteries, and is going to put them into these charging stations. So they have committed to do a project for 5 years in 40 cities, adding some 2,700 charging stations to the EVgo network. So again, it's a partnership commercially, strictly, no government money. So for profit between General Motors providing the batteries and EVgo being the owner and the manager of the EV charging infrastructure. So again, GM is diversifying and finding other ways of putting battery technology that will go in cars that they're making into the future, but also selling batteries into the grid. So you can see how they're starting to mimic Tesla, which does that really well. And then the other news that is interesting is the city of Columbus in Ohio kicked off 3 mobility projects, pilots, pay with money from the Department of Transportation, a challenge that they won. They were the first city a year and a half ago that got awarded $40 million from the Department of Transportation to build a smart city of the future. And so they're just finally deploying 3 pilots. They have what they call smart mobility hubs. And it's all about how mass transit and electric vehicles and probably Ubers, ride sharing come together and deliver that last mile with either bicycles or mopeds or, you know, scooters or what have you. So what do you all think about the fact that we continue to see this whole, you know, drive thrust into electrification of transportation and how we move? And what does that all mean to COVID, ride sharing, not being able to be in the same car or bus with people? Any more thoughts that you all have on that, Llewelyn?
Definitely, we're going to see a lot more electric vehicles, primarily private transportation and fleet transportation within cities, less so intercity because there's some problems, one of which is diesel engines are now very efficient. The second one of which is that diesel engines, as you run a diesel truck across country, you reduce the weight and you get a great advantage in that, whereas if you run down a battery across country, you carry the weight with you. That can be resolved. People I talk to, and I've been on the phone quite a bit on the future of transportation just this week, and it looks to me as though fleets like United Parcel, that's going to go very quickly. Amazon, your favorite company, they're going very fast. Prime delivery is going to be by electric vehicle. They're buying some extraordinary number, and that will be a great asset. Remember, if you get one big customer at the beginning of a technology, I remember being in the Los Alamos National Laboratory talking to a salesperson there. She was selling computers. She was selling advanced computers. And I said, that must be a hard job. She said, oh no, they buy everything we make. Well, that is the sort of situation that makes for a very big inroad, a very big technological shift. When Amazon is going for EVs, that is huge because it's a massive customer. Whereas if I buy an electric car, you do, this is much more complex. The impact is more diversified and slower. We're going to see more and more electronic. Uber is going to take, and all of the ride sharing is going to take quite a hit from COVID-19. People are not going to want to take into vehicles with other people. They're not even going to want to get into an automated vehicle that has had other people in it. So I think that part of the expectation of the smart city has been pushed back. Other things are coming forward. The management of buildings, Alper's world, very important. And again, up the East Coast today, yesterday and today, we've seen tremendous blackouts from weather. The utilities have to do better if we want smart cities. Every time the wind blows, they can't say, oops, sorry about that, but you're out of power. We guarantee resilience from the utilities before we increase our dependence on electricity beyond what it is now, which is enormous.
Yeah. John?
Obviously, the supply chains are being renegotiated. Obviously, the infrastructure is being renegotiated. And from that, will come tons and tons of different kinds of business models. As you said, those that relate to the hardware or those that relate to the social physics, if you will, or the movement of people. I also think that this is it's a culture thing that would be applied to different parts of the country. It would be related to whether or not they are cities, whether or not they are small towns. I think that a lot of Americans would have to die out before it really happens in a large scale. People getting together, it seems to be on the out. People wanting to travel privately, which the wealthy have always done through private jets and private limousines in cities and having their own limousine service. I think that kicks up to the population. But more importantly for us, all of the business models that will evolve out of that. And you have to imagine with me all of the electric models that can evolve, including where would the stations be, its relationship to where you work, and in your home in terms of the charging of automobiles. But remember, as we like to say, the most important thing in all of this is the electric grid. We have to prepare the electric grid to be able to take an automobile that's charged up. So I'm excited as we move into the 21st century about the different models. Not only, there was a model that developed around just the plug up of cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a major model. Can you imagine the plug up of 18-wheelers and the plug up of Tesla cars?
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a big adjustment. Now, the question is, how will people adjust to it?
Right.
People will adjust to it in different kind of ways. They're adjusted to cell phones without knowing it. They're adjusted to the big data, to LinkedIn without knowing it. And really what pulled it along was the business model.
Right.
Yes.
Alper, any thoughts on all this electrification of transportation in buildings and how buildings will need to be retrofitted and changed to take care of this?
Yeah, of course, the demand response will be more important, not on the meaning of the grid, but the local area distribution models. So it has to be more automated, and it is very important based on the dynamic loads within regions. The buildings will have to react accordingly, and that would mean a lot of the code on how the sequences work within buildings needs to be retrofitted as well. And in order to achieve that, we will need more open controllers eventually.
So in a way, we are envisioning short term here the need for re-architecting a new coordination between the utilities and buildings that could have energy storage in their own generation, and they actually will shift the dynamics of that architecture and the flow of energy back and forth, right?
Yeah, so during the night, empty office space would be electric supplier to the grid, and during the day, they could be the consumer. So it will be more dynamic for sure.
Absolutely. So I want to switch before we go and make sure that I share some more stuff that is going on smart energy, right? So PG&E and Tesla have signed a partnership, and Tesla is selling their batteries to PG&E. PG&E is deploying a big test in a single substation, a 182 megawatt energy storage solution. That's massive. Typically, that substation would handle, typical substation handles 40 megawatts, 100 megawatts. This is a significant test on a massive substation area. And so clearly energy storage on the grid itself is being pushed to the limit right now. So PG&E, while still emerging from bankruptcy, doing some significant things. Another interesting data point of what happened this week, the company called BP, or formerly known as British Petroleum, is going to spend $5 billion a year until they reach 50 gigawatts of production of renewable energy, primarily wind, by 2030. So here is the oil guys becoming, power producers on the renewable side, right, at a big clip. And there's a big study that just came out that says the offshore wind, so the wind that is the turbine, the turbines are on the shore, on the waterfront, probably 50 miles out. That market is going to deliver some $1.7 billion in revenue in 2022, just on the leasing, the leasing revenue that goes to the government for the companies to have the right to put those turbines on the offshore platform. And then Dominion has asked Virginia regulators for interim storage targets and get approval for a plan to deploy 2.7 gigawatts of energy storage by 2035. So gentlemen, energy storage is coming. The EV electrification means more energy storage. It's the holy grail of the whole thing. It's accelerating. So what can you share with us? Any insights?
Well, the first thing is you've got to look at the drawdown time. You may have infinite number of megawatts, but if it draws down in 2 hours, it's not going to help you. Mm-hmm. Drawdown time in relation to your market demand. But I'd like to mention something else. I was doing some reporting on electric vehicles, particularly over-the-road trucks, intercity trucks, and one of the big impediments is the cost of rare earths, which has gone up as a situation with China has deteriorated, and all these electric appliances, from windmills to electric vehicles to the cell phone, which just went off inconveniently, use rare earths. They're a great multiplier, and our electrification stops if we don't have rare earth supply. Mm-hmm. That are getting better, but we also have to look at physical storage, like the old standby pump storage, and weights lifted into the sky like a train up a mountain that will come down slowly.
Absolutely.
The life of drawdown is the great question mark over every storage system.
John, I keep thinking that this is the new paradigm shift that really creates the business model platform unlike never before.
I think so. Remember that the problem with electricity is that it's got to be used when it's produced. All right. It's not peanut butter. I mean, it's not water. You can't store it. What a great resource for humans, but my gosh, when it's produced, you have to use it. Now, batteries will get bigger. Even the car batteries are bigger. Perhaps that would be a battery to take me from Austin, Texas to New York. And the whole business model, like Llewelyn said, it depends on how well you can store this stuff. It doesn't matter if we could produce all of the electricity in the world, but we can't store it. It's like spilled milk. It is gone. So what we've done here, and my colleague who won the Nobel Prize for batteries at the University of Texas, Hook'em Horn's is to say this: the unstructured question, the unanswered question for electricity since Tesla, the great scientist at the turn of the century, was how can we store this stuff? Electric cars are here all of a sudden because we can store it like gasoline. Mm-hmm. Big wheel 18-wheelers are here. Houses are here. All of a sudden, can I create a house which can store it? So as batteries evolve, and remember batteries have been evolving since the Baghdad battery of 4,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. As batteries evolve, then the electrification of the business models become real. But if it only lasts for 3 minutes or 2 minutes, what does it mean for the consumer? Right. So it all hinges on.
I'd like to mention there is one other storage system, and that is using surplus electricity to make hydrogen, which is also a storage device. And
it is.
Have a very long life because you can store an awful lot of hydrogen compressed the same way we store compressed natural gas.
Absolutely. So my cell phone is pretty interested if it only lasts 20 minutes as the batteries increase. So I think you're exactly right. I mean, it is a revolution in storage. That's what it is. It will change everything. Airplanes flying electrically, the planet becomes, quote, clean. So it's all about storage to me. It's about the ability to harvest something that we used to have to use when we produce it.
Right. Alper, closing comments, your thoughts.
I agree on the rare elements comments, and I do believe there will be other technologies coming up, like boron might be utilized to store battery as a storage battery, and those are in certain areas. So we will have to look outside of the box of lithium ion, as that material will become the new oil, and right. It already has.
Right. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate the the comments today. Any closing comments or questions for Alper, Llewelyn, or John?
Alper, how do we extend the smartening of a building to residential property?
Great question. Residential is a different market. The way it is installed and utilized is different, and there are some initiatives. Actually, the big companies did try to create their own silos, and then they understood the fact that they need to be talking to each other. So Apple, Amazon, all the large corporations are working on a common IP platform called Connected Home IP. That is very promising technology that they are using Thread, Zigbee, and a common protocol to get all these devices in homes connected. Once that project gets to fruition, the home automation is going to be much easier, and it won't be siloed, and it won't be each company's walled garden, basically. It'll be more of an open garden where everyone enjoys.
Okay, Alper, can you imagine with me, my home office and your home office juxtaposed, and we in the office together without me ever leaving home? So therefore, the new office of the future will bring us together. I might be in England, Llewelyn might be in Africa, you might be in Colorado. And all of a sudden we're sitting around a table together discussing things. And therefore the smartness of the city and the smartness of the building all interact to create a smart connection of people where actually business is done, so that they can literally think that they're in the same room.
Yeah, I think augmented reality might be the solution for that, but we need to have the 5G before we get to that point. We can hardly have this Zoom meeting without our audio being crumbled and torn apart. But once 5G is here, I'm sure those technologies will grow.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent comments. Gentlemen, we're coming to an end here. John, take us away. What are you playing?
Sometimes when the night calls it a day and I wake up down this COVID kind of way, I remember things better left forgotten. And sometimes when I'm holding someone new, I can't help myself. I slip off and think of you, and I remember things better left forgotten.